Breaking economic news, real GDP was 1.5% in the third quarter, slower than 3.9% in the second quarter, but consumers led the way with real purchases of 3.2%, so you know the fundamental underpinnings of growth are solid at the core. The major reason for the slower growth was the huge negative contribution from falling inventories of 1.4 percentage points. In other words, if inventories had not fallen, real GDP would have risen 2.9%. And 2.9% is about as high a growth rate that we think is going to be sustainable in the next few years. The baby boom generation is retiring, spending less. The economy has reached full employment. 2% growth is the new gold standard for the economy. Don't listen to the promises of politicians in this presidential election cycle claiming they can push the economy faster. This slower 1.5% real GDP growth isn't anything that is going to surprise the Fed and tip the scales against a rate hike later this year either. Fed governors have had classes with the board's economic staff on current economic analysis. They have had an earful already of how growth is going to be slower these days. Those leaked Fed economic staff forecasts before the June meeting, looking for potential GDP growth of 1.8% or less over the next 5-year time span. Anything faster than 2% is gravy for the economy. Growth in the 2% range is fast enough to put Americans back to work, those still idle from the Great Recession layoffs. What stands out today is the contribution to growth from government spending. And if you were fresh off of watching the Republican presidential debate last night, you can relax because the federal government isn't spending a dime. It is state and local government expenditures adding to growth for a second straight quarter, a 0.5 percentage point contribution in the second quarter, and another positive 0.3 percentage point contribution in the third quarter report this morning. Both Yellen and Bernanke are on record as talking down the economy. We mean on record as saying growth would be slower looking ahead over this recovery because state and local governments were not adding to growth like they did in prior economic cycles. Well, this is no longer true, and spending by state and local governments is a sign the recovery is here to stay. The other thing that caught our eye was how exports are not the drag on growth that was advertised ever since the dollar soared as commodity prices plummeted last fall. Exports of goods and services added 0.2 percentage points to growth in the third quarter, so this takes away one risk to the outlook. Net real GDP keeps moving along with final demand almost 3% in the third quarter. Don't be fooled by the 1.5% headline print that was dragged down by slower inventory accumulation. There is nothing wrong with today's report that keeps the Fed from lifting off later this year in December. Consumers, exporters, state and local governments all rowing in the same direction, ensuring that the future will be bright. Once again, this morning's news shows the economy is stronger than you think.